Thanks, viewers, for joining us on this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinox Television, live from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. I am Bable Jonathan. In our top stories in this edition of the news, many survivors of the Bafoussam 3 landslide in the west region of Cameroon are roaming the streets of the town helplessly, and of course they are begging for help despite the disbursement of 200 million francs CFA for over 200 families affected by that landslide in the west region of the Republic of Cameroon. We'll tell you how they are suffering in this newscast. And in the northwest region of the country, government is empowering vigilante committees, notably in the Ndonga Mantum division, to step up the fight against insecurity in their communities. Stay with us. After the landslide that hit Guache, a locality in the Bafoussam 3 subdivision, leaving at least 43 persons dead and many others injured, and of course property, houses destroyed, government disbursed 200 million francs CFA to assist victims or persons affected by the landslide, and that catastrophe of course affected over 200 families, according to figures from the Ministry of Territorial Administration. Despite this action by the President of the Republic, many of the survivors of that landslide are still roaming the streets of Bafoussam, hopelessly begging for help. Details, Hemin Iluga.
Days after the Nguache landslide, some survivors are left in total confusion, while others are seen doing few maintenance works. Some are still worried on their family members, who they wonder on the whereabouts of their mortal remains. The man says he hasn't seen his pregnant elder sister with her kids, and he ponders if all their family victims have been discovered. Even though 43 that's already recorded, more searches ongoing on the site. Worthy to note, 200 million CFA francs has been given to assist the bereaved and to resettle other survivors by the head of state. But even at this, victims remain stranded. This young girl says she lives with her mother and they don't know where to go for now. Her mother, meantime, cries every day due to the situation. This other lady says she has been out for nights now and she doesn't know where to go. Others on their part question the resettlement exercise. This man, being another survivor of the catastrophe, he ponders why the government hasn't yet identified a resettlement area for the victims. Meantime, the government delegate of the Bafoussam Urban Council, Emmanuel Zaiti, has expressed his heartfelt regrets while announcing the Urban Council ceremony for last respects to the deceased of the catastrophe. It is scheduled for the month of November.
Several victims of the Bafoussam 3 landslide are still missing, and some political and civil society leaders have criticized government's slow response, indicating that the government of the Republic of Cameroon could have done better in terms of managing the natural catastrophe and of course preventing such incidents. We have details in this report compiled by Immaculate Fogwe.
Few days after the tragic incident that led to the death of 43 persons in Guache, Bafoussam 3 subdivision, west region of Cameroon, some political actors and civil society activists have visited the site, denouncing government's slow pace in handling the unfortunate situation. The government always waits for the last minute before reacting. They just behave like ambulances. Such cases could be prevented if the government had asked the persons to leave the site in time and allocated an area where they could live in. In honor of the dead victims, the Secretary of the United Party for Social Renovation, PUS, Serge Espoir Matumba, thinks a national mourning day be organized for these victims. The 2018 presidential candidate was accompanied by David Ebutu, a civil society activist who shares the same view that a national mourning day be instituted. The head of state, Paul Biya, has promised offering the sum of 200 million francs CFA to families of victims of the landslide and other persons living in the area.
Immaculate Fogwe reporting there with political and civil society leaders criticizing government's response to the Ngwache Bafusam 3 landslide, which left at least 43 persons dead. And in a similar story, workers of the Ministry of Public Works have been working on the road linking Sangmelima and Jum in the south region of the Republic of Cameroon. Circulation was interrupted on that stretch of road as a result of the collapse of a metallic culvert on River Wudeu. That was yesterday, and rehabilitation works have been going on, and circulation is expected to resume on the Sangmelima Jum, a stretch of road in the minutes or hours ahead. Circulation had been interrupted on that stretch of road as a result of that incident, the collapse of a metallic culvert. Now to the south, still in the south region of the Republic of Cameroon, as we see those images of the stretch of road linking Sangmelima and Jum. Of course, after the collapse of that metallic culvert, circulation became impossible on that stretch of road, and I indicated earlier that the workers of the Ministry of Public Works have been on that road struggling to restore circulation. Now we're going to talk about circulation between Cameroon and Equatorial Guinea. It has been impossible for weeks now to move from one country to the other after the borders between the two countries, the two neighboring countries, was blocked as a result of the celebration of the National Day of Equatorial Guinea. For me, Armstrong Sander.
Even after adoption by heads of states of the Central African Economic and Monetary Commission, CEMAC sub-region in 2010, the free circulation of goods and persons within the economic bloc remains a problem. At the border town of Kiosi in the south region of Cameroon, the Cameroon-Equatorial Guinea border is again closed as a result of the 2019 National Day celebration in Equatorial Guinea. Cameroonian businessmen and women in Kiosi expressed frustration over their inability to get their goods across the border to the neighboring Equatorial Guinea. They say their colleagues who dare to cross over to Equatorial Guinea are brutalized by security forces on the other side of the border. Inhabitants say Kiosi is a border town whose economy is fully dependent on the trade between Cameroon and Equatorial Guinea. Hence, the closing of the border has adversely affected the economic and social life of the people. Foodstuff and other key products destined for consumers in Equatorial Guinea are now stuck at the border between Cameroon and the country in Kiosi, as buyers no longer come in from the other side. While waiting and hoping for a possible reopening of the economically strategic border, inhabitants of Kiosi are obliged to live with the current suffering, which most of them describe as a devil.
In the northwest region of Cameroon, government is empowering vigilante committees in the Ndonga Mantum division to fight against rising insecurity as the Anglophone crisis continues deepening even after the major national dialogue that was intended to find solutions to the deepening socio-political and security crisis that has been hitting the two Anglophone regions of the Republic of Cameroon for close to 3 years today. And of course, the authorities in the Ndonga Mantum division have handed over some equipment to some young people who have grouped themselves or who have brought themselves together in vigilante committees to fight against insecurity in their municipalities. Details with EQUINOXE.
It was revealed in a security meeting in Ndonga Mantum division of the Northwest region that alleged Amazonian fighters are exploiting forest resources, stealing cattle and other properties of locals in villages, selling them for money to purchase arms from neighboring Nigeria. Simon Doe, Senior Divisional Officer, says measures have been taken to abort this deal.
We decided to dispatch our envoys to the local government areas of the Federal Republic of Nigeria neighboring Ndonga Mantum. They went to and met the chairman, the honorable chairman of the Taraba local government area, that of Kumi government, local government area, Takum local government area, and Osa also, and they came with valuable information. I have already written to them. We are collaborating to stamp out at all costs this cattle theft that has become a canker worm at our borders.
Vigilante groups have been set up along the common borders charged with fights against cattle theft.
By the side of Nigeria, they have the Miyetti Allah cattle breeding group, which is so active, and we have also validated one in the Dumbu area. So our objective here is to stamp out cattle theft.
The security meeting convened 10 days after the support visit of the Northwest Governor in the division was to encourage the local vigilante members for their determination to fight against insecurity promoted by thieves in the name of separatist fighters.
Most of the thieves around the area who went in as separatist forces stole herds of cattle from the division and even from beyond, and Ndonga Mantum decided in their vast majorities to secure themselves, given that we cannot place a gendarme or a policeman behind every citizen of the nation. So their active collaboration and active creation of these forces warranted that from time to time we assess their output and then together with them seek for solutions to problems that they encounter on the field.
The Ndonga Mantum prefect knows that the vigilante defense group is popular and should be keenly monitored so that its members do not benefit government material support and they convert into amber boys to terrorize their own brothers and sisters.
The branch manager of the National Port Authority in the OPEC city of Limbe in the southwest region of Cameroon has been urged to prepare the town ahead of the eventual construction and functioning of the Limbe deep sea port. He was commissioned into his functions recently, as our correspondent Davison Maimo reports.
Despite the presence of the Tico Wharf, the Bota Port in Limbe, and the Idina Beach, which are official port terminals operating within the coast of Fako Division in the southwest region, the coastline from Tico through Limbe right down to Idina is littered with illegal small port terminals, with some located in villages that are very hostile towards state agents and the forces of law and order. These illegal terminals, serving as export and import routes of goods and services, do not just deprive the state from revenue, but equally serves as gateway of contraband goods into the country. Communicators say The purification of these illegal port terminals along the coast of Limbe is due to the abandonment of the existing official port of Tiko and Limbe and the poor management of activities within these already dilapidating old-age ports. However, with the pressure from Anglophones for the government to construct a deep-sea port in Limbe, which experts say is cheaper and more reliable compared to other sites, the National Port Authority is at the forefront of this project, with the installation of the pioneer branch manager of the Limbe Port Authority after that of Douala. The Director General of the National Port Authority, installing the pioneer branch manager, called on him to implement port regulation activities so as to revamp the port sector in Fako Division, Southwest Region. This, he said, because the Limbe Deep Sea Port project will soon become a reality. The government delegate to Limbe City Council, Mutanga Andrew Monjimba, in his welcome address, say, a full branch of the National Port Authority in Limbe shall certainly lead to a better business climate, thus improving the living standard of the populace. The installation ceremony, which was graced with traditional dancing, witnessed the presence of the senior divisional officer for Fako among other top stakeholders in the division.
Take a listen to the branch manager of the National Port Authority, the Limbe branch manager of the National Port Authority, in the following excerpt selected by our correspondent, Davison Maimo.
We would have to review what's on ground. The ports have not been fully rehabilitated. The government has plans to rehabilitate the port in the nearest future. We would have to evaluate the state of the ports as of now. You know, with the several terminals in Edinau, in Tiko, dispersed everywhere in Benin, and we'll see how we can enhance the program and accelerate it, especially. We're in very trying times now in Cameroon. We cannot forget that part of the state of affairs. We would expect that people should be calm-hearted, cooperative, collaborative, and very friendly. The National Port Authority is the gendarme of the port sector. It manages the Port Authority of Kridi, Port Authority of Douala, Port Authority of Limbe, and Port Authority of Garua. They have an immense human resource, and they are always ready for any task.
Talking Point is up next. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us in Talking Points. We're receiving a political analyst, member of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, CRM political party. Tayon Elvis, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure being here, and I hope I'll always be here when the need arises.
All right, I want us to start with the issue of vigilante committees being empowered by administrative authorities in the Northwest region to fight against insecurity in their respective communities. What do you think about this government strategy to fight insecurity in the midst of the Anglophone crisis?
Well, I see it more as an error. We say an error because, you know, we've said the government has been bent on using cosmetic solutions at all cost, and that is why you see them keep getting to this level where we are. Now, you discover that the vigilante issue, when there was no crisis, was quite okay because people could come together under one umbrella. We had even issues when we were in Kumba, Alaska Street, and all the like, where the people who live in that area even donated money to get the youths who could sacrifice in the night to keep watch over them. So it was a unanimous decision. Now, in the case of the Anglophone crisis, it becomes very complex. First, because the government is doing what we call copy and paste. When you copy from the far north, the same scenario that warrants vigilante groups to exist in the far north is not the same circumstances that will warrant it to exist either in the northwest or the southwest region. In the far north with vigilante groups, you have a common enemy who is an intruder who comes from outside. And those within the areas, either in Mora, Dabanga, or as anywhere around that far north, they know the people around, and so when they see a strange face, they can easily suspect. But in the case of the vigilante group, as I saw over there in Cambe, it becomes counterproductive because we have first of all seen what happens with the case up there at Mendankwe. Now, we are getting to another scenario which might produce the same results we are getting in Mendankwe. Why? Because in this case, those who are the fighters and those who are vigilante are all sons, brothers, and sisters of the same area, which means they know each other. But then another worrisome aspect that comes in is the fact that while they are empowering the vigilante groups, they are not as equipped as compared to the amber fighters. So it becomes, I call it a suicide mission, because you have sticks, you have a cutlass, and you have a phone to call, maybe for enforcement, to community officials if you see somebody new. But the person who is coming with AK-47, Kalashnikov, will not give you that time to call. And so it becomes very dangerous. And so my fear is that this move that some administrative officials are putting in place, if we are not careful, we might get more infighting between the people themselves and they know themselves. So it becomes very complex. And I think that the government should instead solve the Anglophone crisis. And when things have returned to normalcy, then everybody in the neighborhood can come together and they form a vigilante group whereby you see somebody strange in the night, you know that this one is abnormal. If not, it is not going to yield fruits as of now.
And government is giving them some equipment. Recently, we saw the governor of the Northwest region in Cambe, in Messager, where he offered about 80 motorcycles. He offered other equipments to the different vigilante committees to use for the fight against insecurity. Government thinks that this is what is going to kind of reduce theft of property, cattle, and so on in the communities.
It's counterproductive, I'm sorry to tell you. Very, very counterproductive. Because when you issue them bags and maybe other gadgets, you should be able to provide them with equipment that can withstand those who come with those kind of similar equipment or superior equipment. And so if you look at it critically, where are they living? You go to Nkambe or to most areas in the Northwest, the police officers, gendarmes, and the military, they have now relocated from their neighborhoods in town to a particular area, say, where they live as a family, in order to protect themselves from the unknown. So if you bring this vigilante group, you go to Nkambe, there's no single soldier in Nkambe, as I speak now, who lives in the quarter. All the soldiers, police, and gendarmes, they live in confined areas protected. They only live from there, go out, maintain peace and order, and return to barracks. So in the case of the vigilante group, when you put them in that nature, a man is living in the mother's house, a man is living in the father's house. So in a case whereby if a military personnel or convoy or the Minister of Defense convoy or the governor's convoy can be attacked, a convoy well equipped, I mean equipped by the state to the fullest, what about a vigilante group that can, because the state can never equip a vigilante group like the state? It's obvious.
Like the military.
Like the military, rather. You cannot do it, because when you do that, the tendency is that they might one day become a threat for you even to disarm. So why they're giving them light, maybe equipment to protect themselves with the bikes? But the question is, the amber fighters themselves, from what we have seen, even when they were celebrating their what we call Independence Day,
October 1.
October 1, you discover that they were not celebrating with light weapons. So imagine that you stand as the vigilante group, and this kind of person comes in with AK-47. You have a bike, maybe you have a whistle and a small tear gas in your hands. He blows off your brain. It's automatic. And so we have to be very careful with this kind of decisions we are taking.
And another question is, or concerns the weapons, the guns that are being used in the two Anglophone regions of the country within the context of the Anglophone crisis. Where are those guns coming from? How are some of those guns imported into the country? These are questions that have remained without answer.
Well, you are asking a good question. If I was an amber general, for example, or I was an amber chief in command, I could be able to tell you. But now that I am just a civilian like you and myself, so they have their modus operandis that you and I don't even know. And I'm sure, since as it's a guerrilla warfare, they will not want people to understand how the arms come about, because the fear will surely be to them that when you have an idea, suddenly you might intercept the arms from coming in. So it's a very complex issue, but I'm sorry, I cannot answer unless I was an amber general.
All right, now to Bafoussam, to Gouache, in the Bafoussam 3 subdivision, where a landslide has killed over 43 people. Listen to the first secretary of the United Party for Social Renovation, the Pius political party, Serge Espoir Matomba, and of course David Ebutu, a civil society leader, criticizing what they consider as government's slow response to that catastrophe. Well, what do you think about the way government has been managing this issue?
Well, the issue is that, when disasters occur, the government politicizes it. That's why I'm sorry to tell you that. Each time a disaster occurs, the government takes it in a political maneuver. You rush there to give money, but we are concerned at the level of preventing things from happening. We have risk zones. If you go sometime in Limbe, around before half mile, around Gibraltar Junction, we have an area there, half mile there, mile 1 rather. It's a risk zone. We had landslide. After that, people are still living there and building. We have had areas in Mawo quarters in Limbe. One time we had landslide and people are still building, and the authorities are quiet. So if you go detailing even in the West region there, when we say that we have sleeping government officials, because if you go to the Ministry of Territorial Administration, they have a disaster management department. All right, you have city councils, you have subdivisional councils who have experts who dish out land titles at random, and people build because they're interested in the money and not interested in the risk. Now you get to look at it. We have geologists who are supposed to tell you that this area is marshy and could not be good for habitation. But what happens? The government sometimes will just say it in a passing way instead of implementing it, and you go, people are there having building permits. Even if they don't have, it is the state's priority to ensure that people don't live in disaster zone. They stay quiet. So the government is in a system whereby they only fold their arms. When disaster happen, they rush there now to make a whole lot of noise, call media, so they should know that the government is helping. We are more interested with the government preventing things from happening, of which they are failing. If it's in a better country, and the mayors, the government delegates should have resigned. Because there are a lot of people to build there.
There are many of such risk zones. When you go to Bamenda, for example, you have people who have occupied the foot of the upstation hill. Yep. People are building and coming up, and even after the mud flow that blocked the road some years back, people continued building. You go to Yaoundé, you have people around the Mbankolo Hill, you have people around Itukume, you come to Douala, you have people in Bois de Saint and everywhere.
Yeah. There are so many.
So on. But there is another question on the responsibility of individuals, the responsibility of those who go and buy lands in those places and build their houses there.
You know, when you talk about responsibility, now the issue I will tell you here is that we will not be able to tackle those people as per se, because we have a poverty situation in the country that you must bear with me. Most persons who manage to live there are people who hadn't enough money to live in normal areas. So poverty situation has forced them to live in the risk zones. But the responsibility, the greater part of the responsibility is on the state. It lies in the hands of the state rather, because the state is supposed to use iron fist. You prevent, because when I sit, if I'm looking at an area beneath the foot of probably upstation hill, and I see one person builds there, and everything is okay, the next thing is that the next person will come there, carve his own area and builds. And you see they keep multiplying and coming. But if the state was to prevent, the moment the first person builds and you demolish, the next will not come. So the state at a point in time fails in its responsibility because have sleeping civil servants who pretend that they are cartographers, they are this and that, but at the end of it, because the state also needs money, because there are houses on those areas that have land titles, house permit, building permits, and there are some that don't have. But the question now is, the government delegate, the mayor, and the officials who are there, you are supposed to take responsibility to prevent them, because with the poverty rate, I keep on explaining. But then most persons don't understand that when you build on a slope, you could acquire a house there cheaper, a land rather cheaper. But the cost of building, if you want to build a befitting house, becomes more expensive. But in the areas of Southwest, where we have the Karabut, what we call wooden houses, you see, most of them prefer to climb up the hills and then put a wooden structure, because they don't have that weight to weigh on the ground. But the important point is that it's the risky zone. So government delegates, mayors are not doing their job. And in a responsible government, when there's a landslide of that nature, where people have built so much in in risky zones, you are supposed to resign. You have not heard any government delegate saying he's resigning because we have lost more than 40 souls there. You have not heard any mayor saying, no, c'était ma faute. Bon, il faut que je démissionne. So we don't have that culture. And so we need to nurse the culture, but the government is supposed to take the lead. When you take the lead, others will start getting scared. Hey, if I invest 2 million here and the government comes, I'm in problem. Imagine the number of persons, over 40 souls over there. It means that the landslide did not come. Many persons would have been building on that area and going. And it would have been having maybe a disaster someday that you have more than maybe 400 persons dying. So the government is supposed to take its responsibility.
And the head of state has ordered the disbursement of 200 million francs CFA, 100 million to help the persons who are supposed to quit the area, and 100 million, that is about 150 families, and the other 100 million for 50 families of dead victims. And we heard some persons speaking in a report in this newscast and saying that they are helpless, they are moving around and begging for help, they have nowhere to go to, despite that action from the President of the Republic.
As I said, the head of state will have a good motive, getting assistance or sending assistance to the persons. At the level of the distribution, you will get there, that's where politics will come in. I have said we have thieves in the form of administrators and the powers that be around, because head of state will disburse that kind of money. There are people, look at the issue of Chad Cameroon pipeline. You will understand there are some persons who have not been compensated. There are many who are compensated, they look at their eyes. If you are not very powerful, you take probably 50,000 francs. And those who could be powerful, maybe because you have connections here and there, you take 2 million or 5 million. So at the end of it, the state offers money, but needed to come in with people of high value. I know the governor of the West Region is a respectable somebody. If he is in charge of that commission, I will have confidence in it. Because I know the governor of the West Region, if he comes there, he'll be able. But now when you leave other people to man those commissions, it becomes dangerous, because people at all times have corruption deep in their bloodstream. And so at each point in time that they see a single franc, if there's a means of taking everything while the intended target does not get anything, they will be happy. It's a call for concern that when you disburse money, you put credible people ahead to monitor how the money is being distributed. Else, we will be playing a hanky-panky game where you get people crying left to right that they have not received a dime, as many have not received, even Ezekiel victims. You could imagine that there are Ezekiel victims who keep crying. They call some of us journalists, please blow by trumpet, since I have not received this dime, I have not received, some say they received below. And nobody gives you the criteria that is required for those disbursements. So it becomes now at the whims and caprices of the local administrators and the party officials of the central committee or the pro-regime members who decide now what to give to who and what time. It is too bad.
And we're going to wrap up with catastrophes on our highways, on the roads in the Republic of Cameroon. The last is on the stretch of road linking Sangmelima and Jum in the south region of the country. Yesterday or last night, the metallic culvert collapsed and circulation was interrupted and work has been going on. But there seems to be a problem on our roads. After Manyai, there have been other incidents like this where metallic culverts and other sections of the road. It was recently we had another case in the west region of the country. What is happening on our roads?
The thing that is happening on our road is corruption. When CRM says we will fight corruption to the last man standing, I think Professor Maurice is not making an error. Because in each project, if you look at it, the quality of the project executed does not reflect the intended quality that's supposed to be reflected. You have what we call soil testing. Those who road engineers understand what I'm talking about. Before you carry out a project, you carry out proper soil testing. And from the soil texture and the testing you get and the results you get from a geographic, from a geology lab, you can be able to understand what kind of materials to use. The materials you will use in an area that is marshy is not the same kind of material you will use in an area that is dry, or what we call dry land. So unfortunately, we have people who have intentions that when they get contracts on our roads, they execute it the way they can, and it is received and the money is paid because they want to make fast cash. And of course, you know the issue of 30% in the public contract system in the country. And so with the bottlenecks, money going left to right, that's why I said that until a credible system comes in place. Go to Equatorial Guinea. You don't have RMP. You don't have Minepat. You don't have Minimap. All contracts are controlled by the presidency. But I tell you, if you go to Equatorial Guinea, you go to Bata today, you go to Malabo, they have superb roads because under the presidency, any error you commit in the road, as far as fault in the course of construction, you are penalized. But for us here, we have taken everything political. Everything is, you must be linked to the CPDM, you must be linked to the powers that be. That's why people come here and do get crash work and then collect their monies and go. At the end of it, the state is suffering because if that road was well constructed, the proper test done, the state would not be requiring hundreds of millions of francs CFA to come back to that road. So that's why I say that corruption is part and parcel of the system. And that's why you will get many roads that will be getting bad and more money is required, whereas we have personal issues of health, challenges and all the like that are pending. That is a system the regime has put in place.
All right, before we go, your party, the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, is planning a protest move within the framework of its resistance plan against electoral hold-up and other issues of national interest after the liberation of Maurice Kamto and other militants of the party, while people like Vice President Mamadou Mota, Vice Communication Secretary Mutaga Silvanus, who are still in jail. The party is still planning a protest that has, however, already been banned.
Well, you understand that CRM has always been at the verge of each time you have a move. If you look at the situation we are facing in Ebolova, it tells you still what we are facing. That you have a move, and it is normal that the divisional officers, the sub-divisional officers will authorize you today, the next minute they are banning you because you have instructions that comes from hierarchy. Don't allow this, don't allow that. But I said earlier that any move that Cameroon Renaissance Movement puts in place, it is to let the government understand that things are not moving. And in a responsible government, you will simply visa the itinerary they have and then send troops to guide them. Remember, we have been having peaceful protests without destruction. That's why in the case of Sangmalima, when youth went and vandalized shops, I said the state is an accomplice because those youths who vandalized, that's what called theft in broad daylight, they were supposed to be ferried over to the military tribunals as they did. With CRM militants who did not even steal as per se, or those in the northwest, southwest, who came out with peace plans and they were fired with gunshots. So at the end of it, you realize that any move Cameroon Renaissance Movement puts in place, the intention is to send a signal and not to create disorder. On the other hand, the state looks at the party as a party that comes to create disorder. You will never hear a member of the party holding arms. You will never hear a member of the party breaking into shops and looting. So the question now is, who is supposed to be responsible? That is the reason why we call on the state to perform its action. If we talk about freedom of press, freedom of political manifestation, once we make our intention known to any administrative area where we carry out the move, that administrative authority is supposed to visa and then protect us to carry a move for the benefit of this country. And
after remember, Professor Maurice Kamto was released, he said in Yaoundé that the struggle will continue with him, but in peace, no violence. He said this, but the authorities are raising threats to public peace and other. For example, with the Bolowa protest move that you are planning, the ban indicates, the authority indicates that there is a risk of a clash between the militants of the CRM and the CPDM, who had also planned a protest on that same day in the same town.
No. That, let me tell you, you know, the state is using iron fist to intimidate CRM. And we have said we are not going to go through any form of intimidation. You cannot tell me that a GO gives you authorization for your move ahead of time, validated in a Bolova, and then a youth section of the ruling party comes and tells you that you cannot hold this meeting until they do them part, and then you withdraw the authorization, saying that you are afraid. Instead of you calling the youth leader to work, to order rather, and even cautioning him and sending him to jail for threatening public disorder, you condone with the youth leader of the CPDM, and then you come now to say that for fear of public disorder,
the youth leaders of the CPDM simply announced theirs too.
It was not correct. That's what I'm saying. That if you look at it critically, you are asking a good question. Who are those who made their intention known first to the administrative authority? It is CRM. I have the document. So I cannot make my intention known to a GO in an area, and then somebody comes after me and says he too will protest on that same day, and you withdraw my authorization. I have said that the state is not serious, because the state has that tendency of iron fist on CRM party, but it doesn't work in a democratic society, because we are discovering now that the state now works with the ruling party. I said in a normal country, ceteris paribus, the youth leader who declared that should have been in jail for threatening public disorder. A GO cannot give an order authorizing people who came first. Somebody comes later, and the GO decides to withdraw the authorization, saying for fear of public disorder. It means that GO is working for the CPDM. I'm sorry to tell you that. And almost all of them are working for the ruling party. That's why CRM is being intimidated day in, day out.
Earlier this year, a similar incident occurred. The CRM announced some protest moves across the country, and the authorities banned the protests, and you went ahead with the protests, Professor Maurice Kamto and other persons, militants of the party, were arrested, even though Professor Maurice Kamto, Albenzunga, and the others were arrested at a private residence. Militants were arrested during the protest move and detained. Some of them have been released. Do you still plan to go ahead to challenge public authority or the authority of the administrators who have banned this protest move in Ebolowa?
What you should understand is that CRM is not out to challenge. CRM is out to do the right thing. And we think that within the ambit of the law, we are respecting what the law says. You get the point. And so some person might look at it as challenge, just like government functionaries would think it's a challenge. Now, as long as the party hierarchy puts a program, they understand the implications of the program. And we, as militants of that party, are bound to follow because we think that CRM is one of the only parties that has as many legal practitioners as possible. As I speak now in Cameroon, no party in Cameroon has that. And you can't tell me that the bunch of the legal luminaries who make up CRM party, to be precise, will be flying the law. It means we read in between the lines and the constitutions before we take any action. Unfortunately, the actions we read in between the line are always misinterpreted by the state as a means of challenge. CRM has not come to challenge the state, but has come to do what is right at a particular time. And that's why we say that the state is supposed to show its maturity, political freedom of expression and everything, knowing fully well that CRM does not come with arms, and give us the access and support us, than condoning with ruling party giving a different version because they are the ones who are putting up the conflict. They are the ones who are putting up the conflict. If Ebolowa is hot today, it means they gave the leeway to the YCPDM to move ahead. And so you can imagine the kind of country where we are. And so we think that we will be able to challenge the status quo of whosoever is standing on our side to do the right thing in peace. I repeat, in peace. Though some people might think that we can't do the other way around. And so we follow the rule, and you will never hear us holding arms, and you will never hear us looting. But you hear us following our itinerary that we have given to the administration and taking it to the latter. That's what CRM is all about.
Tayon Elvis, you're a political analyst, member of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, CRM political party. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, and I think I will always be marking present once need be. I thank you also very much.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today.